It's yummy.
Okay, good. All
Thanks.
right. You're welcome. Hey guys, it's Erica. Welcome back to my channel and thanks for watching. Today I'm actually going to make a ham and asparagus frittata for you guys. If you're watching this, it's Sunday morning and maybe you're waking up and you're thinking, what am I going to make for breakfast? This is it. You should use this recipe. And if you don't have ham and asparagus and red peppers in your fridge right now, that's okay. You can use any other types of vegetables that you have. And a substitute for the asparagus here would be some small florets of broccoli, some spinach, maybe even some zucchini. And if you don't have ham, you can use bacon or diced chicken or even steak that's been left over and you want to cut that up and put that in there. Frittata is really kind of a everything that's left over in the fridge kind of meal. So to that pan, you'll see that I've added some salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and then onion powder. Those are kind of the four things that I go to when I'm doing just basic vegetables. And I'm like, I'm just going to add some seasonings to it. When I say that, that's what I mean, those four things. So I'm just going to stir this up and get the peppers coated with the ghee. And then this is on a medium-high heat, and I'm going to leave them there for a little bit. I got the peppers going first because they're going to cook the whole time that the frittata is in the oven. And I like to just leave them there so they stay warm. So when in the end, I'll just turn them down to low or just turn them off and let them stay on top of the stove top, and they can just wait for the frittata to be done. So next what I'm going to do is in this Pyrex dish, I have about 9 eggs, and I'm going to whisk these up. And a frittata is basically a egg dish that goes in the oven. So it's a little bit foolproof because you don't have to, be particular about how you're cooking the eggs. You just kind of cook them till they're done. So to these eggs, I'm going to add a splash of some heavy whipping cream. And when I say a splash, I mean like 2 to 3 tablespoons in there. So just kind of like a dollop. Oh, that one's not open yet, so you got to open it first. And then I'm also going to add some Parmesan cheese. And the Parmesan cheese that I'm using is the finely grated kind, so it's not going to be the shredded kind that's, longer. It's going to be finely grated, and I like to keep that one in my fridge all the time. So there is really never a time that you're going to go into my fridge and open it and there's not going to be multiple bags of Parmesan cheese. It is something that I add to my grocery list all the time, if not every week, because that is our main go-to cheese. So there you'll see it's there, and if you were watching my grocery haul, you saw me pick up that this week. That's a staple item for us. So I'm adding about 1/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese to this egg mixture. You can substitute any other cheese that you have, but I will say I wouldn't recommend that you mix it into the eggs when you substitute it, because if you have a cheese that's longer and shredded or it's a little bit heavier than the Parmesan, it's probably just going to sink down to the bottom of that Pyrex dish. And then when you pour it out into the pan, it's just going to come out in one big clump. So if you have any other type of cheese, cheddar, mozzarella, Monterey Jack, anything that you have in your fridge will do. But what I would recommend is that after you cook the vegetables, you sprinkle the cheese on top and then you pour the egg mixture over it. So you can kind of control the distribution of the egg mixture in the pan and make sure that you don't just end up with one big bite of cheese there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep stirring these peppers. I'm definitely a stirrer. I think that's probably a kitchen personality type. I like to stir things and make sure that they look exactly how I want them to look. Oh, and I dropped one on the ground, so we'll see if Rebel Dog gets over here in a little bit to eat that one up. So now I'm switching burners for these pans, and really I'm just doing that so you can see what I'm doing in this pan. So in this larger pan, this is actually where the frittata is going to cook in the oven. And again, I have about 2 teaspoons or a tablespoon of ghee. And to that, I'm going to add that already cooked ham steak that I did pick up at H-E-B earlier this week, and then the asparagus. And the asparagus was left over from another meal, and I had just put it into a food saver bag and froze it just for a day like today when this might happen, and I might want to make a frittata. And then I just pulled it out and let it thaw and then cut it up into smaller pieces. You want to have bite-sized pieces in this because you're not going to use a knife when you eat a frittata. It's just going to be a fork. So you want to be able to just kind of break it off with a fork and eat it in your mouth and not have a lot of extra chewing to do by having a long string of asparagus in there. So now I forgot I need to cut some parsley, so I grabbed my cutting board out of the sink there. And I'm going to chop up some parsley to go on the top of this. while those items are just cooking away on the stove. And the ham is already fully cooked. So really here, I'm just trying to heat it through because it was in the refrigerator and have everything kind of brought to the same temperature. So I'm going to heat up the asparagus and ham and then pour the egg mixture over. And the eggs have been sitting out on the counter, so they've come down to room temperature. That way when I put it in the oven, everything cooks at the same time and you get a great texture on the eggs. There's no, oh, it's cooked over here, not over here. So what I'm doing is I just turned the broiler on high for the oven. And something you didn't see here is that I actually tested out this pan size before I started this video because I wanted to make sure that I could put the pan in the oven and it would be close to the broiler, so one of the top few racks, but that I wasn't going to burn myself when I went to pull it out. So at first I was like, okay, I'll do it 2 down from the top, and I put that in and I was like, oh, that's a little close. I don't know if I'll be able to safely pull that handle out. So I went ahead and moved it down to the 3rd from the top on the rack slot there. That way just to be safe. So then I just spread out the ham and asparagus into an even layer so that you kind of get a bite of asparagus and ham in every bite. And now I'm pouring the egg mixture throughout the pan very carefully so that I don't mess up the spreading out that I just did of the ham and asparagus. So this is where I'd recommend if you're using a different type of cheese, spread the ham and asparagus out or whatever vegetables you're using, then put the cheese on, then dump the eggs on top of that. That's how I would do that. So now I'm ready to put this in the oven, and it's going to go under the broiler for about 6 to 8 minutes. And I checked it a couple times throughout this, just opened it and saw what it looked like. I want it to be a little golden brown on top, so that's kind of what you're looking for. And then you'll see how I test it for doneness when it comes out. So now I'm looking at these peppers and I'm like, well, there's a piece of asparagus in there, so I'll get that out. But then also they're a little crunchy, and I like my peppers when they're sauteed to be a little softer, easier to eat. Again, I don't want to have to get a knife out, and I don't want to have a stringy piece of pepper in my mouth. So what I've done here is I cranked the heat up to high and added a little splash of chicken broth, and that's going to help it to kind of steam away. So I'm not going to cover this at all. I'm just going to let that broth be absorbed, and some of it will also evaporate while it's cooking. And so I do that, and you can do this 2 or 3 times throughout the cooking process. If you come back and you see, okay, well, everything evaporated, but they're not quite as soft as I want them to be, you can definitely repeat it. So I have it on a very high heat right now to help do that and speed up the cooking process. Now I'm just checking the frittata. Well, not done yet, so turn the light off. When you're new to cooking, there is no shame, and you can see the peppers look great there. There is no shame in opening the oven and checking on it. There's hardly anything that will be ruined by opening the oven a couple times to look at it. Things like a souffle, yeah, that has some science behind it, and you probably don't want to open the oven multiple times. But for this frittata, it's not that big of a deal. It's an easy dish. So open the oven and see what it looks like. Don't be afraid. So now I pulled it out. It's a little golden brown on top, and I'm just using my finger to test to make sure that the eggs are firm. I want them to be slightly, I want to be able to push on them and them not push back so much, but you don't want to be able to just stick your finger through runny eggs. So now you can see it's done and it slides straight out of that nonstick pan onto the cutting board. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some chopped up parsley to the top just for garnish, and then a little bit of the Parmesan cheese. Again, I love to add cheese to the top, and for me, if I don't add cheese to the top of this, my husband will go behind me and do it anyways. So I figure I might as well just add it for him so that he knows the cheese is inside, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it with a pizza cutter into 4 pieces, and that was enough for me to have 1 piece for dinner. My husband had 2, and then he took the other one for breakfast the next day. So this was a great way for me to get kind of a couple things knocked out at once. Then you can see I have the roasted red peppers there, and I'm just going to add those to the top of that. And there we go, cutting it. I'm just going to cut it into 4 pieces. Like I said, you could cut it into 8 pieces or 6 pieces or however many you want to, or you could even cut it into little squares if you don't want to have a pizza-shaped frittata. There you go, you can see what it looks like. It's got the ham and asparagus inside. nice and hot. It's steaming, and then I'm going to add some of the peppers to the top, and that's that. It's basically done and ready to eat. You can also add more cheese here if you want to. I know people like to add cheese to things, and I'm definitely on board with the extra cheese train. So thanks so much for watching, guys. This has been just kind of a fun, different video for me. I've had a lot of requests to do things like this and show people recipes. So if you like this, comment below and let me know what else you might like to see in one of my next videos. And thanks for watching.